All right, Steve.
Yeah, doing great. How you doing, Jack?
Not too bad. Staying busy. I will say that.
Well, that's good.
Doing a lot of networking.
That's
That,
better than the alternative of not being busy at all.
I joined a BNI group about a year ago. Are you familiar?
What group?
BNI
Uh,
networking.
no.
They're worldwide. I think there's 200. I want to say there's like maybe 4,000 chapters worldwide. Atlanta has close to 40, but it's in our group. It's 43 professionals. Everybody does something different in there. So we've got attorneys, we've
Okay.
got financial people, we've got commercial realtor, but it's only one seat per profession.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I've been getting most of my. I've really started focusing on bankruptcy attorneys and family law attorneys because usually there's a real estate component involved
Yeah.
in what they do. So
Certainly. Yeah. Certainly. Sounds like a smart.
I tried to use this COVID time wisely.
Yeah. That's always getting those business contacts. I know a lot of people. That's their main way. So it's interesting to hear that from you as well. So,
Yeah.
well, I guess we'll go ahead and get going. And this is a topic today. We're going to try to talk about sales, selling, sales strategy, sales techniques, etc. I'm not going to get too much into objection handling. I feel like that in itself can really just gobble up. Just talking about one objection can gobble up a lot of time. But we're going to talk about this again. I want this to be, the whole theme of Mastermind is a bunch of people getting together, sharing ideas. Because I always fear I'm going to come here and no one's going to say anything, and I'm going to turn around and say, "All right, well, see you later." I always come very prepared. Sometimes that gives the impression I don't want people to talk, and that's not really the case. Sometimes you kind of get in a little bit of a role. You want to, finish a thought, but nevertheless, okay. So let's go ahead and get going a little bit on this here. It's about making a difference by using sales techniques, having impact. And, I started this thing. You see the NASA thing at the bottom there. Well, it was about a couple of years ago, I guess. It doesn't seem like it's been that long, but a year and a half, 2 years ago, I started a thing called NASA. It's called Negotiations and Advanced Sales Academy. And my belief was that because of technology and things like that, and all the threats or all the disruption we had in our industry, that we had to do something. What is it that we do that can translate to value? And I felt like, especially when using sales skills and negotiation skills. Again, I'm not going to get into too much. I have a whole. I need to do that again. I've got a 3-hour CE credit class on negotiations. One of my favorite topics. You use, and by the way, you use some of the sales skills in negotiations. You use some of the negotiation skills in sales. But we're going to cover mostly what I could call sales skills, not necessarily negotiation skills, not necessarily overcoming objection. We always want to thank our amazing sponsors that are with us all the time. And when I say with it, I mean with us. So there's Wendell there. Hey, Wendell, how you doing? Think you're still muted.
Sorry. Good morning there. Afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
How's everybody? Hey, Joe. How are you, sir? Joe is now a hair club member. He closed his own loan with Homestar.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Well, that's cool.
So get a little update.
Homestar was amazing. Thank you so much, Wendell. You guys totally rock.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Steve, thank you very much for letting us say a few things. A little bit of update. Rates are stable. We've seen a lot of the secondary market angst get taken away. One thing I do want to mention, which is very important because it's kind of been a little bit of change and caused us some problems, is this COVID thing, which is we're by no means out of the woods on that. I'll give you an example. Let's say a customer worked from January to March at someplace, and they were working full time. The plant was running great, all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden they shut down for 8 weeks during COVID, or 12 weeks. And then once all that dust settled, they came back to work. What Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and FHA are making us do, they're not allowing us to no longer exclude the lack of income they made during that 3 months. They're making us take a loss of 3 months, zero income, and averaging it year to date. And that's the income that we have to qualify on. That's brutal. So especially on our hourly workers who lost their income. I had one the other day. When I qualified them, they were $3,500 a month, and now they're $2,600 a month, and the loan won't work because of the guideline change. So we, that, Steve, I think that's awful. I think that's not fair, but I think that's really the uncertainty in the market, thinking there may be another COVID layoff if it spikes again. So that's the thing that our loan officers really have to watch and be careful of. And I have one more thing in my little soapbox a second. Steve Wagner would tell you that my commitment to you guys, if anything doesn't feel, taste, smell right at Homestar, who do they call? Me. You notify your broker, the broker calls me. I had a situation where I was notified of a loan that's been in trouble for 6 days and no one told me. And the customer was not happy with Homestar. I would have fixed that loan much earlier. So Steve, if we can just, if anything doesn't look, smell, or taste or feel right, if it's got Homestar on it, call one of your brokers, your amazing brokers, say, get Wendell involved or Jeff involved, and we will fix the problem or tell you the truth. Hopefully it's the same thing. So Steve, that's all I had. I'm not fussing at all, very grateful, but I will fix a lot of things. We will. We'll go to the mat for you and repair those problems.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, nobody's going to have a perfect 100% rate. You just want to hope, everybody's giving their best effort. And I know you guys do. So
let's give them some money away. You want to start with that?
Yep. Let's do that.
All right.
It's good for the people that got here early.
Here's a chicken or an egg. Which agency came first, Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac? Yep, Fannie Mae.
All right, Joe. Well, congratulations, buddy.
Fannie Mae came about in 36 and Freddie Mac came about in the early 70s. So Freddie Mac is Fannie Mae's grandchild. They do basically the same thing. They're government-sponsored entities. They establish guidelines. They open up capital markets. So Steve, I'll bug you again in 15 minutes and we'll get some more money away.
All right. Thank you, Wendell. Thank you very much. All right. So let me know if anything doesn't look. Sometimes when you're dealing with Zoom, I've got all kinds of screens and I'm trying to look at this and look at that. Apparently, sometimes things cover things up, and sometimes people don't tell me something's covered up. I don't know it. So if you just let me know if something gets covered up or something doesn't seem right, just let me know that, because it's Zoom can be a little challenging at times. I'm going to lead with just a real quick clip with and this is going to be different than all the other masterminds we've done. I've added a lot more multimedia to this, but tell me who this might be. Somebody put this on the screen when you find out who it is. See who's the first one. No money on this one, but this is just for fun.
Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, everything is selling and everybody is a salesperson. Whether you're a dentist, a doctor, a preacher, a teacher, a coach, a child, music man, it doesn't make any difference what it is that you do. Everybody is a salesperson. Let me.
All right, so that's just taken. Not only that,
now, of course,
with your spouse, with your kids, everyone is a salesperson. So learning, sales skills. And by the way, if you look at your license, unless you've gotten a, associate broker, everybody starts off with this underneath their, on their license there. So it's kind of blurred. I realize that, but it says salesperson. Just so we're not taxi cab drivers. We're not necessary evil. We are professional salespeople, and we really shouldn't back down from that. because that is one of the key things we bring to the table. Now, we talk about there is ethical sales. Let's listen to Warren Buffett.
Right now, I would pay $100,000 for 10% of the future earnings of any of you. So anybody wants to see me after this is over. Now, if that's true, you're $1 million asset right now, right? If 10% of you is worth 100,000, you could improve the value. Many of you, and I certainly could have when I got out, if just in terms of learning communication skills. It's not something that's taught. I actually went to a Dale Carnegie course later on in terms of public speaking, but if you improve your value 50% by having better communication skills, that's it's another $500,000 in terms of capital value. See me after the class and I'll pay you 150.
So what he's saying there, what is what is selling? It's just advanced, thought through communications. This is again more of Warren.
Fact number 5: he spent $100 on a Dale Carnegie course to improve his speaking.
I'd first signed up for a Dale Carnegie course in Manhattan when I was at Columbia, but I gave him a check and I stopped paying the check. The gutless wanderer. So when I got out here and now I'm selling stocks, I realized I just had to be able to do it. So I went and took $100 of cash and handed it to Wally Keenan, who had the Dale Carnegie course, and we did all these crazy things. And
what? What did you do?
Oh, standing on tables and talking. I mean, there were 30 of us there that couldn't say our own name without choking up. And being in the company of them, and Wally was a great teacher, and we did these things to get out of ourselves. I mean, so that we just weren't all tangled up, with fear of failure and all that sort of thing. And then as soon as I finished it, I went right out to the university, what was then called the University of Omaha, and I said, I want to start teaching. And so I started teaching when I was 21, because I knew I had to get up in front and keep doing this or I'd go back. And the only diploma I have in my office is the Dale Carnegie diploma. I'm proud of the ones from University of Nebraska and Columbia, but I don't know where they are. But the Dale Carnegie is up there because that changed my life in a very big way.
Right now, fact number.
So Dale Carnegie is really mostly sales. Call it communication, public speaking, but it was really a lot of it, and the majority of that's what he's known for, is selling. So it's just advanced communication. And to start off, I want to lay the foundation. It's a little bit long, but has anybody read a book by Robert Cialdini? He's one of the most brilliant men in the world. He's a Harvard professor and done a lot of research on influence, written many books on influence, very next level stuff. But here's what he talks about. Here's what he says about selling.
Hello everyone, Luca Mazzucchelli here. Today we speak about persuasion at work with Robert Cialdini. Hello Dr. Cialdini, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Luca. I'm glad to be with you.
Today we all have to persuade others in...
Oops, sorry about that. Hold on.
Few minutes. In your opinion, what are the elements that turn a short communication into a persuasive one?
Well, there's one that I think stands out in this regard, that causes people to suddenly want to listen to us and consider whether they will accept our recommendation. And that is the idea of potential loss. Psychologically, the idea of losing an opportunity is more powerful than the idea of gaining that very same opportunity. So one way we can arrange for people to listen intently and be ready to move in our direction is to give them genuine, honest evidence of what they will miss if they fail to move in our direction. Not just what they will gain if they do, but what they will lose, because loss, psychologically, is more compelling than gain for humans.
What is the first rule of sale?
You know, I always heard that the number one rule of sales is to get your customer to like you. And once they feel this sense of rapport, they will want to do business with you. I think that's true, but I don't think it's the first rule of sales. For me, the first rule of sales would be to come to like your customer, to show that person that you care about him or her. That allows this person to trust you and to feel comfortable moving in directions that you are recommending, because we all know that we protect the people we like. So if we have come to like our customer and they see it, they will feel more comfortable with us, and they will be right. Because if we truly come to like them, we will be sure that we protect their interests.
Well, I think that's very compelling if you ask me, because we always say that people go with who they know, like, and trust and have confidence in. But, and then maybe we're trying too hard to get people to like us. But when the real magic is that we completely lose ourselves in them and really show them, you can go over the top with it, but really show them that you like them and you are really concerned about them. And that's the magic ticket. I totally agree with him. As a matter of fact, he doesn't just have a feeling on this stuff. He's got all the resources of Harvard. He's done numerous millions and $1 million research. I do recommend you read all his books. He's got seven aspects of persuasion. It's really, really great stuff. And I also like what he said about loss being more compelling than gain. So as we're being salespeople, there's a lot of techniques that we can bring into our presentations that highlight the loss aspect, as much as the gain. And we always think about benefits. We sell benefits and what they're going to get, but just remember that it is proven science. So that's what he is. He's a psychologist that is proven that that's some really good advice there. No matter what we say, forward, I think that's the kind of those two principles are foundation which we build our sales strategy on. Because we're going to get technical here as we get in there. We're going to get into closes and techniques and stuff like that. And and I'll be interested. I know, Joe, you're very sales minded and very, that's why you're at this class, and you really liked creating your presentation and put a lot of thought into it. So I'm excited about hearing some of the techniques and some of your stuff that's worked with you, Jack, you too, and Wendell. I know Wendell gave me a gift. I forgot it was my birthday or what, but the subscription. And I'm gonna go back in that one of the top sales trainer around. That guy was brilliant. Wish I could get some of his stuff on video here and play it for you guys. But as we go along, and butt in any time, by the way, really, if you have something to say. I don't want anyone to be shy, and just feel, I don't want to interrupt them. Just go interrupt me, at any time if you have something to say or a question to ask. But the whole point is about not trying to manipulate anybody or anything like that. We have people we represent, and we want to make a difference and add value. When the sale is done, they're glad they listed with us or use us as an their buyer's agent because of the tools. Yes, Joe.
Well, just to respond to some things that have worked for me, I think the important part starting off is not go into a sales pitch, not go into a presentation. Sit down at the table with somebody and just get to know them. Find out what's their motivation. When do they want to move? What are their goals? Where they want to be a year from now. Let them talk about themselves and find out, building that rapport initially. And even when you ask them a question like, well, what's your goal in moving? And they say something, follow up with, tell me more. You'd be surprised if you keep saying, and where do you want to move? Oh, really? Tell me why. Keep going and digging deeper every question just to let them talk, get to know them, and establish that rapport. And then I've started doing something, and I even put it on my business cards now. then I try to let them know my goals so that they get to know me. And I use 3 goals, and it's on my business card. I said, my focus in working with you is going to be CEN. Sounds like sin, but it begins with a C. C, I'm going to be communicating with you on a regular basis, making sure you know what's going on at all times. E is educate. I'm going to educate you on the process and the trends and let you know so you can make the best decisions. And then N stands for negotiate. My goal is to negotiate the best deal for you when it comes time when we've got an offer on the table. So I just let them know that little background about me. And then I say, it's a listing agreement, let's go to your home and take a look. So then after I do that tour, I come back and say, let me give you a tour of my home at Virtual Properties. And I do a little iPad presentation. And usually by that time, I built up the rapport that I've been very good at closing a listing agreement, at least. I've worked less with buyers, but some of the buyers I've been working with were people I had a listing with and selling their house and turn around and helping them buy a house. So maybe that's helpful. I don't know if it's what you were looking for with some ideas.
Totally awesome stuff. Oh, by the way, somewhat on topic or off topic, our next coaching thing, Mike and I are revamping the entire thing. We're adding a lot more exciting stuff. We're going to have what we call special days. I don't want to take too much into this, but we're going to see if we can get 5 people to give a 20-minute or less presentation. And then we're going to have like a contest around that. Maybe I can get Wendell to, get involved in, and so we'll have a voting. But the beautiful thing is everyone will learn a little bit from everybody. And, and so we'll try to have people that are pretty well on, but when you do the coaching thing, I think you're gonna be excited about a lot of what we call special sessions that we have on there. So I know you gave a great presentation and you're probably always working on it. It's never done. It's never done. So everybody recognize this guy right here? That might be a question there. All right. Well, we'll see.
Sales.
And for like an entrepreneur, not forget a salesperson, how about just an entrepreneur who's looking to start a business? Well, if you can't sell, if you can't influence, if you can't persuade, good luck trying to get your business off the ground. I'm not talking about just your customers. I'm talking about the bankers, the people of venture capitalists, your vendors, your credit card processor, the people who work for you. How do you get people to work for you excited? How do you get them excited? How do you get them to want to buy into your vision? At the highest level, what sales really is, it's the transference of emotion. And the emotion you're transferring is this emotion of certainty. That someone feels certain, yeah, it's a good thing, it's going to help me, it's going to fill my need. When you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to start a business and you're recruiting people, well, you're selling people on your vision for the future, your vision for this company. And if you can't do that, good luck trying to get great people to work for you. It's nearly impossible, which is why you always see, the people, if they say, oh, he's a visionary. Well, that's true, but typically not only are they visionaries, they also possess the ability to sell the vision to other people, to inspire them, to motivate them. So selling is not just like, people think of selling, oh, well, I'm not a salesman, I don't need to. Well, yes, you do. You need to learn how to influence. How about trying to get your kids to make their bed or do their homework or believe in the value of education? How about trying to get a landlord to give you a reduction on your rent or to extend the lease the way you want? How about trying to negotiate terms? You understand, it cuts to everything.
You need to be able to sell, whether it's Kickstarter, whether it's New York Times, whether it's your local newspaper. You need to be able to communicate effectively and sell.
All right, that was George Belfort. The Wolf of Wall Street was the first guy that's ever, forgot what this guy's name was. He's probably a billionaire, I'm pretty sure.
A sales.
There's Wendell again. I can't hear you, Wendell.
So you ready for some more money?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do some more money.
All right. Before I do that, Steve, you mentioned sales, which is what I've been a student of like you have for a long time. And one thing that has motivated me, and I thought about you the other day because you worked in the health club industry. And people, a health club salesperson is not much higher than a Fuller Brush salesman sometimes.
No.
But I remember that Jason Evans said something that changed my whole outlook on that. And he was and I'm sure you were, Steve, one of the largest health club salesmen in his company's history. And he mentioned that when we had him come live, and he said, you know what if I sold a health club membership to a person who lived 15 years longer because he came in and exercised, and his family didn't have a loss in the home. His children weren't fatherless or motherless. I thought, wow, that kind of gave me a whole new perspective. And I realized in our industry, we're selling a product that can't hurt somebody. And if you believe that you're really selling something that benefits somebody, then your whole outlook becomes a lot different. And I just really have lived my whole life like that what I'm selling is good for people. It's a chance to build wealth. In the health club industry, it's a chance to have a better heart, to live longer. So Steve, you probably saved some people's lives or extended people's lives because of those health club memberships that you sold.
Yep.
We've developed wealth because of houses that we sold. We worked in the rain. We spent nights trying to get a contract together. We spent nights trying to make a loan work. But at the end of the day, someone has more money today because of us. And that's been my life's work, Steve. I know it's been yours. Joe, I know it's been yours. It's just been a pleasure to do that. So let's ask a question. This is an FHA question. What great event in history caused the development of FHA?
I know that one.
That's it.
Yep, that was so.
It came out of the Great Depression.
We don't know whose iPhone. That iPhone, somebody texted me, said I was going to be late or something like that, and we don't know who that is actually. Oh, Yvonne. Okay. Hey there, Yvonne. So that's Yvonne.
So, Steve, I don't know how many health club memberships you sold, but I want to thank you for doing that because there's somebody with a father or mother today because of you.
Well, Jason has also told another good story. I watched a lot of that, took a lot of those courses on there. He said that what impacted him was a child. His dad had somebody in for a life insurance policy, and the dad kind of actually said, I want to sign up tonight. But that salesperson did one of, well, look, instead of closing for the sale, the salesperson said, look, I'll get back with you, and find out, call you next week. He said, well, I'm interested. He goes, yeah, well, just think about it. And I'll get back with you next week. Now, Joe, that's not how we do things. We close, and we don't want to be overly pushy, but if they're ready to go, we always ask. And unless that's not the hard part, but that's kind of the challenge, not to be pushy. And that's where skills come in, because if you're pushy, you're not very skilled. You need to work on your skills. But so guess what happened? His father died a week later, and his mom and him, the whole family, really loathed that life insurance salesperson, because the dad and the family thought he was coming out there to do a life insurance policy, and the guy kind of pushed him off, and almost instead of closing, just did the opposite. And he said, and Jason said, that is still a motivator to this day. And so the point of the matter, Wendell was getting in it, you got to believe in what you do. You never back down that you're a salesperson, because that is an honorable thing. See, we have been taught, a salesperson's trying to manipulate, do stuff and get them. It's not in their best interest, blah, blah, blah. But that's not the case. So make sure, have a little moment with yourself, and you got to believe that that selling is a noble thing, and you are the product, so that you should be able to set that up. So this is basically the typical consumer today, but new challenges. I demand it right now. I want it free. I want total control. Everything must be easy. either serve me, cater to me, or get out of my way. You know, I don't need anyone. Everything I need is in the palm of my hands. You know, we deal with a lot of that sort of thing. So we're challenged to bring value. Brian Buffini.
Sells skillfully. Sells skillfully. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to share how to sell like a pro. We have gotten away from the word sale. Many of us have negative connotations of what it means to be a salesman or saleswoman or salesperson. I want to share with you, it is one of the most noble professions of all. I've shared with all of my kids, I don't care what you do, I don't care what you study, I don't care what line of work you're in, you better learn how to sell. And sell with integrity, and sell with skill, and sell in such a way that you serve. But you learn to sell. A good pastor is nothing more but a good salesman. Are you guys with me? Okay, you got to be able to sell. You got to be able to sell. And I'm not talking about some cheesy schlocky, when you say this, they say that, and when you say this, I'm not going there, although there's good fundamentals that we all need to practice. But I'm going to share with you that nothing happens in the free market system without a sale. Nothing happens in the free market system without a sale. And we need to embrace salesmanship and not run away from salesmanship. Are you guys with me, yes or no?
So, yeah, that's basically what we've just been saying. That's step one in being a good salesperson, is not backing down from being a salesperson and knowing you got a job to do. And like that Jason Evans situation, really caught. Oh, by the way, the Jason Evans is one of the top. He's all over the radio now. He calls himself the top sales trainer. He probably is. He's really smooth. But the family was eating, if I remember correctly, it's been a while. I thought they were eating like ketchup sandwiches. The mom would actually have to go into like the McDonald's and grab the ketchups and would get the crackers. And they were that destitute. So State of the Union, more competition, more diverse competition with all the iBuyers and all that stuff. Zillow and IDX World have cut our industry in half. Large investors of all kinds, buying homes without agents. Rates are going up. Well, they're not really now. Inventory is staying down. That is true. And forecasts for another market correction are always around the corner. So we must evolve, or we'll be weeded out like the dinosaur, because we got to bring value. Yeah, I love that. The unicorns on the right. We go first class or we don't go at all. And I guess that's why there are no unicorns there. So, all right. So we're getting in just a little bit of warm up.
So the first thing I want to talk about is mastering the art of selling. Now, I have a passion, and my passion is collecting fine art. And if you look back over the years to the masters of art, the Rembrandts, the Chagalls, the Moreaus, if you study them, you'll realize that they, of course, had a tremendous talent for art, and they used oil on canvas. Well, in the profession of selling or motivating people to make buying decisions, the medium we use is not a canvas and not oil, but what we use are strategies, techniques, questioning skills, and when you paint the picture properly, the positive emotions of the buyer to say yes to your offering are created. And that's the same when I, for example, was early in sales. I didn't understand the basic truth that no one says yes logically. They say yes emotionally, then they defend that decision logically. So if you are in the business of moving people to yes decisions, it is done primarily emotionally. Now, I didn't know this when I was brand new. Now, I want to ask you a question. How many of you ever had too much month at the end of your money? Can I just see your hands? Well, if you said yes to that, that's kind of the way I started. I was 19, unheard of, to go into the profession of selling, primarily choosing real estate at that point, which was a very high-end item for a 19-year-old. And I didn't do well when I started. Now, granted, today I'm blessed to hold a record for the most number of home sales that have ever been made, but that wasn't true in the beginning. I only made one sale in the first 6 months. And that's not really true. I did not make the sale. I was the only one in the office. A couple came in and the husband said, "We saw a home with your sign on it and we want to buy it." And luckily he knew how to fill out my forms. People say to me, "What happened, Tom, to change you from a 19-year-old kid that didn't know what he was doing?" I did what you folks are doing today. I did what you watching this program are doing. I invested in my education. I spent the last $150 I had to go to a seminar, and the man teaching it, I can honestly say, all these years later, had a life-changing effect on my life. And that can happen to you when you go to a program with your mind open and you listen carefully, intently. You do your very best to take the pearls, those certain things that are said that can change your life if you apply them. And that is the real key. The application of what is being covered in these programs. Taking it, applying it, and having the changes take place.
All right, so yeah, and getting back, so repeat anything often, it will become you. So the thing to remember on sales is that it takes repetition, and you learn techniques and you repeat them where you don't want to do it, but that's what it takes. No one wants to repeat things over and over again, but that's what it takes to be an excellent salesperson, to learn these advanced techniques. I really had a breakthrough in selling. I resisted it for a long time, but then in the middle of my son's jujitsu, I got to see how effective jujitsu was and how kind of really thin guys were absolutely wearing out some of these big old strong muscle bound. I saw a 145-pound, 5'7", 145-pound guy defeat a former NFL lineman who still looks like he could suit up. The NFL lineman, I think, he was like 6'5", 6'6", 330 and muscled out. And that guy just within minutes subdued him by using techniques and practice. So I said, oh my God, now I get it. I understand sales. You can have a great personality, great talking skills, but that's not going to get it. Yeah, technique will always defeat natural ability. One of the things that I forgot who said it. Jordan Belfort said that transferring what people buy and what you try to transfer is certainty. That's what people buy, certainty. And that's what they're looking at you in a listing presentation. Joe Huggins, is he giving me certainty? Is this gonna, they're looking at you like this, they're looking at you like that. And if you can convey certainty without being arrogant and all that stuff, then they're gonna go with you, And so, yeah, it's a little bit more than who they know, like, and trust, but they who delivers certainty. So just remember that's ultimately, if you want to know what they buy certainty. And that's what you're trying to transfer, the emotion you're trying to transfer. You got to have it authentically within yourself in order to transfer it. So you got to get very comfortable with yourself so you can transfer that certainty. All right, so I love Tom Hopkins. Let me tell you what I like about Tom Hopkins. He says whenever he goes into a presentation, and sales. And by the way, he started off as real estate. That's where he really made his fame, and he branched out to being corporate America and sales training. But he always says your job is to make them relaxed and comfortable. Because a lot of salespeople, you're trying to transfer enthusiasm. So some people are all like real spazzy and, if you can get them to relax, yet still transfer enthusiasm. And he's someone to, I think, mirror and emulate. So just remember, repetition is key. We only really, whenever we listen to something, we only really retain about 10%. So just remember that. The best example of all time was what we saw in the Karate Kid, as far as using techniques and mastering them. When the little kid there, he thought he was getting karate lessons, but he's having to wax his cars, paint, and then the kid's finally getting upset, And he says, "Yeah, you're just using me, blah blah blah." And he throws a punch at him, and he automatically blocks it. And then you start realizing that that plays out in sales, believe it or not. Sticking with the kind of martial arts or Asian theme there, Sun Tzu, the battle is won before it is fought. So again, this is about just a little bit on preparing for success. So this is interesting. Okay, I want everyone to pay attention here because I'm going to ask you some questions after this. And so pay attention. And this is from The Wolf of Wall Street. It's interesting because Jordan Belfort, it's about Jordan Belfort, but Jordan Belfort's is the guy that I never knew this until I finally slowed it down real quick. Jordan Belfort introduces himself, which is Leonardo DiCaprio. But pay attention to this.
Have ever met. So I want you right now to give a warm Auckland, New Zealand welcome for my good friend and the world's greatest sales trainer, Mr. Jordan Belfort.
Thank you.
Sell me this pen. It's a amazing pen. For professionals.
Sell me this pen.
It's a nice pen. You can use the pen to write down thoughts from your life so you can remember.
Sell me this pen.
Well, this pen works, and I personally love this pen, and I think this
All right, a little Freudian slip with me on the problem wit. I guess those are some dimwits there, and maybe that's what I was thinking. What were these guys doing wrong? Somebody could put it in the chat there. Tell me what you think that the problem with those, what were they doing wrong? What would have been the better approach? Why was he taking that pen and handing it from one person to the next? They were all really doing something wrong. Joe kind of alluded to it earlier. Yeah. All right. So, well, what Joe was saying earlier was right on the money. Yeah, it's interesting because there is a later on describing Jordan Belfort was put on the spot. Hey, how do you handle that? Normally, as Joe was saying before, you got to start with questions. You don't move straight into selling. You don't even know how to go about this. So, that would be fun to think, what are the best questions to ask in this situation? How would you, by the way, if you're in the sales, getting a job, like a salary paying job, that they've actually been known to do that, and just to see how you would respond to it. So if you ever, hopefully you stay with virtual properties and everything, and be your own boss. But I think that if it's ever in the job interview, they're trying to see your question answering skill. Are you just going to do what they do and just go jumping right in to selling? This is the best pen of all time. So I want to say that asking questions such as, how long have you been in the market for a pen? What are you looking for from a pen? Again, it's a pen, so it's a little silly. Think any questions such as that to get the dialogue going. and finding out exactly what they're looking for. And maybe just stating, hey, look, I know you asked me to sell you this pen, but it's not my belief to sell you something unless it is exactly what you're looking for. What I really like to do is find out exactly what you're looking for in a pen, and I'll find that pen for you. This may be the pen, may not be the pen. You know, so you ask a bunch of questions, and then ultimately, that's when you start to use your sales skills. So it's an interesting start. That was the very start to the movie Wolf of Wall Street, and I found it really applicable. So telling is not selling. If you want, you've heard the adage, if you want a better answer, ask a better question. That is, Joe.
I'm sorry, but I lost my Zoom right at the end of that to find out. I've always seen that image and I forgot what the key point was and how to sell that. So I missed it when my Zoom went down. Could you repeat it again, please? Just what
was that the movie clip? Did you not see the movie clip?
No, I saw the movie clip, but what was the answer he was looking for? I missed your response to it.
And it was what you said. I didn't go into it, but you nailed it in what you were saying. It is asking questions and finding out before you start launching into, pitching and this, using sales closes, which we're going to get into. We're going to get into some sales, but most of the good sales closes, by the way, are questions. And yeah, Jack, you're muted. So you're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I also read a lot of Dale Carnegie and Napoleon Hill, but also a guy by the name of Jeffrey Gitomer. And he said something one time that stuck with me, is that people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. And if you can figure out that combination, there's your key.
Yeah, I've read some of his stuff before. I'm trying to remember what books he's read, but I've read a little bit of his stuff, and I've seen some of his videos online, and yeah. So yeah, people kind of want to be sold in a strange way, but no. So Joe, specifically, I was asking what questions do you? So that was the problem. They were just launching into sales mode. This is the best pen of all time. This thing's got this, it's got that, and really, I think what he was looking for, and what it's not just what he's looking for. Apparently in a lot of sales jobs, which you have to go through an interview process, a strict interview process. If you start launching into telling and not questioning, they basically treat it just like he does. So what they're going to be looking for is what a true salesperson is at gathering information, finding out more about what the consumer really is looking for, what their hot buttons are first, and then trying to match the benefits to the desires or needs of the customer. So,
because I think he did that in the first part of the film when he was learning how to be a salesman. He learned how to do it, then he bookended it at the end. But I never remembered what the first part was.
Well, I saw another interview somewhere where he actually was put on the spot. They were interviewing him, and his question was, the question he said, one of the questions I might say in that situation is that how long have you been shopping for a pen? Really anything to kind of start that process to kind of change the dynamics of the situation and do, where you're gathering information. And then once you feel like you've gathered enough information, then you have to then start talking and, and using sales techniques if you can to match up. So we're going to go over some sales techniques. The big question is how and when do you use them as such in the listing presentation? So, the right questions properly placed nearly always lead to better understanding and a better sales result. So make sure you use active listening, pay attention. Like Joe was saying, people like to talk about themselves. We learned that in How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you really, people like to talk about themselves. Unfortunately, we like to talk about ourselves too. We like to talk about what we came to talk about, and we usually end up just talking, too much about what we are about. It's hard to take the narcissism out of us, but a really good salesperson does take that. That's why if you really start studying what a really good salesperson is, a salesperson is a good person. A bad salesperson is probably a bad person. Not really a bad person, but they, you know what I'm saying? They're more self-serving. A great salesperson listens, is empathetic listening and all that stuff. So don't interrupt, you know, because if you're interrupting, you know, it's really about you, you know, and respond appropriately to show that you heard not just their words, but their complete message. And as Joe was saying, follow-up question, keep following up questions. So, and then that shows them, you know, what was Robert Cialdini saying? That you like them. Yes, you like them. But then the other thing is you're interested. You really want to understand what they're trying to accomplish. You're not going with assumptions. I always use it kind of like a doctor. Imagine a doctor coming in and just, you know, writing a script right there. Here you go. You're like, you haven't even heard what's wrong with me yet, you know? This is hemorrhoid medicine. I've got a sore throat. What, you know, why are you doing that for? You know, but sometimes salespeople immediately start to write the script before they've even heard what we're trying to. So we're getting it. We are going to get about a couple seconds into some solid techniques, and I'd like to hear y'all's techniques. So, but here's more of Tom Hopkins, who I really believe is the best sales person I've ever heard before.
So let's start on some of these questions. First of all, there's a basic truth that we all have to live by in the field of sales. Don't miss this now. If I say it, they tend to doubt it. If they say it, it's true. So the key is to take any statement of fact and see how you can turn it into a question.
Now, did you hear that? That's not easy. That goes against everything that we are programmed to do. We're programmed to tell. But if you can take, instead of telling, be able to create it into a question and get them to say what you wanted to say, what you would normally say, that is magic. That is when you really cross that threshold and become a great salesperson. But we'll go over some techniques that allow them to do it. Here's some questions. And like I said, Joe came up with a lot of them. What drew you to this home when you bought it? And this is kind of in a listing presentation setting. What is your favorite, least favorite thing about this house? What is your favorite, least favorite thing about this neighborhood? Why are you looking to sell? How soon do you need to move? And then even follow-up questions to these, what is more important, price or timing? What challenges do you see in selling your home? Who do you think is the ideal buyer for this home? I was at walking a $2 million piece of property 2 days ago. That's the very question I asked that guy. I said, who do you think? It was a very good question to ask, because you know these people, they've had this land in their family for about 80 years. I asked both ways. I said, I'll ask you this. I'd like to ask you a question if you don't mind. And I'm going to ask it in two different ways. Who do you see buying this property and paying the most money? And who do you see as the person you want to sell to? And he kind of answered both my questions at the same time. And I'm so glad I asked that question. He said he would much rather someone put a big house on the middle of it. But he realized that the highest amount of value, he goes, I told him, you just nailed it, because most likely as a developer is going to maximize that property, is going to pay you the highest dollar. But I know for your family, y'all are going to have to make a decision, who we're going to market this to, because, the person that's going to put the house in the middle, they're probably not going to, they're fewer and further between, and they're probably not going to come close to the price as a developer. So, what is your plan if your home doesn't sell in the time period indicated? Have you spoken with other agents, or do you plan to? What qualities do you want in your agent? Someday, hey, what are you looking for from a real estate agent? Go ahead, Joe.
The question I ask in that process is, they always want to say price. So I start off and I say, I want to find out, first of all, how many times they've bought or sold a home in their life to see how comfortable they are with that process. Then I'll say, aside from me getting you the best price for your home, what is it you're looking for to have a good relationship with a real estate agent?
Beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful.
And most of them haven't thought, they just say price. But then a lot of times they'll say, well, my last agent didn't keep me in touch, or didn't keep me informed. And then I know what motivates them to have a good relationship.
You know, then you're right. You just said it. They don't really, they know, but they don't know. It's in there, but they don't know how to articulate. They don't know what to say. We don't ask the questions. All we have to do is ask the questions. Now we know how to make them happy and how to be successful, but we don't ask the questions most of the time. So that's brilliant. I love that, because they'll say price, but then there are other things important too. So what's the next thing? Yeah, that's great. I love it. I'm writing this down actually, so hold on a second. Y'all should write that down too. So yeah, man, I'll tell you what, just rather than going there and just winging it, having a strategy is going to help you immensely. So again, let them know that their responses will help determine what the best course of action process of selling the home, most effective way to convince a prospective client that you are the best agent around is to prove that you truly heard and understood their concerns, needs, and expectations. So this is again a little bit more.
So the questioning is so fun.
Yeah.
And I think that anyone who's been watching, if they'll just say to themselves, if I can find a way to ask instead of tell, that's what I'm going to do from now on. And again, realize a couple things. Make sure they know the answers to questions. Don't ask them a big technical question that threatens them.
Right.
And try to always say, the answer to the question confirms I'm getting an agreement. I'm getting them to go further into the final purchase.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna look back at my notes. I wrote something down. You know what he says that sales is moving people towards a yes decision. Closing techniques, because we always think of the final close where you ask for the business, but we use so many subtle closes. And that's really what I want to let people know. Closing techniques, that we're going to get into some of these specific techniques. All they're trying to do is, a closing, we begin with the end in mind. We know where we want to get, where we want to take this conversation. We want to get it to here, and we want the answer yes. Okay. But the prospect or whatever is generally taking the conversation left, right, backwards. So we use techniques and methodologies to keep moving the conversation towards where we're patient. You got to be patient. You got to, the timing has to be right to get a lot of these sales done that are more challenging. Some of them you already have in the bag. You just can't screw it up.
So
sometimes
when you
let me set it and just. Let me see if there's the same one. Yeah, I think we've already watched that one. Yeah, so you can't over interrogate. You got to be careful with the way you do it. You don't want to come off as being an interrogator. You're right. If you ask the right questions, contain enough impact, the sale will close itself. Yeah, if you really ask great questions. So here's the thing: why do we close?
Now let me give you the definition of closing, because many people don't know it. It's professionally using a person's desire to own the benefits of your product, then blending your sincere desire to serve in helping a person make a decision that's truly good for them.
Yep, I like that. Also like moving people to a yes decision, but he says it's what's good for them. Yep, I just repeated that again. Any phrase or technique that is employed that serves to bring the customer closer to yes. That's kind of my definition of a close. Because again, there are subtle closes, there's setup closes, and there are final closes. Sometimes it's simply asking for the business, and sometimes it's merely holding off a final no. Sometimes it serves as a building block for a later yes, or setup for a later yes. So, all right, so now we're getting into closes. So let's talk about closes. We'll start with the final close, because I want any professional salesperson to have maybe 3 final closes that they've rehearsed and they wouldn't stutter and stammer, and they know it. I mean, if I had to say, hey, I'm not putting you on the spot, Joe. I'm just saying, Joe, tell me your 3 final closes. I'm not asking you to do that, but I would like for people to be able to say, this is my number 1, this is my number 2, this is my number 3, and kind of be able to articulate them pretty well. Because guess what? You'll use your number 1, and they may throw in an objection, and then you'll have to circle back around, kind of massage that, and then later on you'll have to ask again. So I'd assume in a real tough one, you might have to ask for the business 3 times. You don't want to ask it the same way 3 times. That won't come off well. But let's listen to Tom Hopkins on the final close.
Deal. Now you're doing everything right, and you're moving right along. You've filled out your paperwork. You've done everything, and it's now time for you to go for the signature. And you ask them to sign it. Don't ask people to sign anything. What if mom and dad said, don't you sign anything? And that one word sign, where they were heading towards a yes, can push them into no. So instead of sign, we ask them to okay it. John, I'll just need your okay here. Or you can ask them to approve it. John, I'll just need you to approve it. Or you can ask them to authorize it. Just need you to authorize my paperwork as you would a check. Or you ask them to endorse it. It's amazing. They'll okay it, they'll approve it, they'll authorize it, they'll endorse it, but they won't sign it. And I mean it. I've watched it. I had one company do tests on this. They decided after they invested in some more training, they said, hey, let's test this. And it was amazing how many people, when they were asked to sign it, said, we're going to think it over. We'll get back to you. Amazing. And I really want you to work on this. I mean, practice it. John, I'll just need you to okay my paperwork right here, and we'll set up delivery next week. Some of them won't know what you mean. They won't know what you mean. Watch, I'm going to have you be the buyer. All of you are the buyer now, ready? And I want you to say, when I ask you to go ahead, I want you to say, oh, you mean sign it. Ready? So, John, Mary, I'll just need your approval right here, and we'll set up delivery for next week. When they say, oh, you mean sign it, all I want you to do is give them a nice smile, nod your head, and say one word, fine. And now they know what their job is. Try it, gang, it works. John, Mary, I'll just need your authorization right here. Oh, you mean you want us to sign it? Fine. And nod with a smile, and they know what they're supposed to do, and they will take that pen and put their approval on it if you'll do it just like that.
By the way, he just brought up a great point. One of the most subtle things you can do, every time you want a yes, you nod your head like this. Every time you kind of want to know, you don't want this, Joe, you don't want this kind of thing in your life now, do you? You certainly want to sell your home quickly, don't you? You know, if you do that, it's hypnotic. It almost, it really takes a lot for them to go against that. So as he was doing, just practice that. And almost every time you really want a yes, or you really want to know, you don't use it all the time, but if you really want that yes and really want that no, that will make an immense difference. So again, one of the things, I'll just need your approval right here so I can line up the photographer, the stager, the appraiser. That's one of the final closes there. Just another direct close. Hey, so hey, Joe, are you ready to put me to work? When you ask the final close, you shut up. And really anything will work. I mean, not everything will work. I think there's some better than others. But if you say something confidently and you have the right timing, and then you go like this, so you're ready to put me to work? I think your odds of getting a yes are very high. Nothing. By the way, the next saying is this: never be afraid or dismayed by an objection, because there's been studies done that there are certain personalities that absolutely have to give you an objection. They will not feel good if they don't give you an objection. There's a certain percentage of people that will not buy unless they throw something out there. And then if you'll either overcome it. They're easy to overcome, by the way. Some of these people are just real easy to overcome. They just want to go through the process. This is one of the research that's done, is that there's that group of people, and it's a pretty good chunk, 25 to 30% like to throw something at just to do it. They don't even know why they do it, but they do it, and they're actually really ready to sign, but they just do that anyway. So don't be dismayed by that. What you'll do is you'll get, we teach the 7-step objection handling process, and that takes a little bit of practice to go over, but you'll get it, and then you'll isolate it, so is this the only thing, all that, I understand where you're coming from. I feel the same way, that you would. I've been in a similar situation. Is this the only thing that seems to be bothering you at this time? So if it wasn't for this, you'd move forward, right? Super. And then you go in and you overcome it and you gain momentum and then you close again. And so that's kind of how all that works, but never be afraid. Go in expecting at least one. Be prepared for at least 3 objections and to be able to kind of go through the problem. We're going to spend the whole thing on the 7-step objection handling. That's the hardest one of them all, but it is the one, I've seen them all. I've seen all the objection handling thing from Tom Ferry and all the other ones, but that's the one. If you can master the 7-step one that we have, it's magic. So anyways, I found some other screenshot it put up there. Just sometimes there's anything else I need to show you. Sometimes people ask that, is there any other, I heard Richard ask you, and I'm trying to remember verbatim, but he had a pretty good closing. Hey, before I do all the paperwork and everything here, did you have any other questions for me? That's pretty good. Before I do the paperwork and everything, did you have any other questions for me? Great, super. Well, then I just need your approval right here. And we'll get, and by the way, old school, as we'll see with the writing close, we're about to get to that writing close. I thought that's brilliant of Richard. I'm going to add that one as one of my top 3 right there. And that's a good one to launch. Hey, what's the worst thing? You flush out what their problem is. Don't be afraid of it. Some other ones. Let's see. Will you be available next week for the first draft? I don't know what that is. Oh, do you want us to start? I think the thing slid down. Do you want us to start this week or next week? That's kind of an alternate close one, assumptive alternate close. I think that would be effective. Are we in position to go ahead? When you ask that question, you shut up and be prepared to have silence go for 15 minutes if you have to, because he or she who speaks first loses in that situation. I just need your okay here. Is there anything else I need to demonstrate? Super. Then I say we move forward. Just need your approval here. You got to be confident when you go for the close. And you got, there are some people, we'll talk about assumptive closes and get more into the techniques in a few minutes. But, the assumptive one can work against you. Some people may think you're a little bit pushy when you do the assumptive close, but it's very effective. So you have to use your instincts to think what you can, what you can and should do, what you can get away with, or when can I set my stager or photographer? I've got some prospect potentially ready to look now. When can you be ready for them? Then then super summary close and so forth. So let's listen to him more about the final close.
Those are the 4 things you do when you're great at that table, presenting and closing a sale. The final closing, this is the final closing, begins one of 3 ways. The first way it begins, now I'm talking, they know everything they need to say yes, and now I'm going to the final closing. The first way it starts is the buyer asks you a porcupine question, the answer to which you then write on the paperwork by saying, let me make a note of that. In other words, they go, Tom, will you train us to use the copier? You don't say yes. You smile and say, is training something you'd like? When he says yes, you then move right onto the form. Well, let me make a note of that. Training required, and I am closing the transaction. That's such a beautiful way to start. The second way it starts, number 2, you ask them what we call a final closing question, and it's a minor close. It's called the test close. So you ask them a test closing question. Gosh, I'd love you that are in sales to just turn to the buyer and just say this sentence. John, how are you feeling about all this so far? I didn't ask him to buy. I said, how do you feel? And when they say they feel good, that's when you know it's time to move right on to your paperwork by just saying, let me make a note of that. The next way it begins, see, there's 3 ways. The third way it begins is you just ask them a reflex question and move on to your paperwork. Now, there are more than this, but the most popular reflex questions. Number 1 is the date. Gang, you're well off if you don't know the date. Just smile and say, you know, John, I've been running at such a pace. Do you know the date? He gives it to you. Just thank him and put it on your form. And you're closing. Number 2, the correct spelling of the name. Don't do this with a Jones or Smith, but if it's Mr. Stinskowski, smile and say, Mr. Stinskowski, can you help me with that spelling? Well, I sure can. He spells it, you fill it out on the form. The third way, which was my favorite, was you ask the middle initial. Mary, did you have a middle initial? She says B. You say, let me make a note of that, and you on the paperwork. And you're going to have such fun when you make this happen. Now, here's another very, very critical point. When you finish filling out any form, you pick it up, you scan it for correctness, and deliver your final closing sentence. You want to write your own. Let me give you an example. Here's what we call just a generic one. John, with your approval right here, we'll set up delivery for next week. And there you've asked him to put his signature on it. Now here is the most critical instruction I'll ever give you, and I learned this many years ago. Whenever you ask the final closing question, and you that are taking notes, you can score this big. When you ask that final closing question, you must shut up. See, if you talk, you'll end up owning it. Let them have it. Now, this takes a little work because it's nerve-wracking. But when you smile and say, John, I'll need your approval right here, and you shut up, all he can do is either give you the reason he's not going ahead or put his approval on the paperwork. Those are the...
So the writing or written close is I call 3-dimensional close. It's the foundational thing you need to learn, first of all, in sales. It is somewhat old school because now we're going digital and all that stuff, but I still think it's so powerful that it might even persuade me to want to go paper here. It could, you know, so the 3-way close, because at first it's a final close, because you assumptively ask for the approval or the okay or the authority or the autograph. You know, if I can get your okay here, I'll line up my photographer for early next week. All I need is your approval here, and I'll put this plan into full speed ahead. I like the way he asked that, John, with your approval right here, I'll line up our photographer for next week. And that's pretty, that's an assumptive close, and you're using paper, and you put an X where they're supposed to sign and turn it around, hand them the pen, and shut up. Now, yeah, so those are some other, you know, basically it. So Mary, shall we get the process going? Great, I just need your approval right here. So kind of like that. Now the other B for the writing or setup or it's sometimes called written close, sometimes called writing close, and other sales areas is more the order sheet close. We don't really technically do it, although we do an order sheet, which is the dual entry form type thing. You know, asking them for the date as you're writing is, you know, so one of the things, you're on a listing presentation, you can use this or not use it. There's so many closes, you won't use them all. But psychology, the more you write on pieces of paper, especially the stuff that you get them to sign, like you're writing all over it, the more they're psychologically, without them even knowing it, they know that unless they stop you, and they're not even thinking about this necessarily, unless they stop you, they're slowly making a decision of yes to go with you. You know, when you have the listing agreement right there, and you write, hey, can you tell me what the date is? And you write the date on the listing agreement, and you write there, you haven't asked for anything yet, but you're writing that on there. don't they usually have to say, hey, wait a minute, Mr. Huggins, I don't think that, I see you writing on that listing agreement. I'm not listening tonight, They usually will say that, and that may flush that out. Yeah, all I'm doing is writing stuff on the piece of paper. So in case you are, I'm all ready to go. I can, save your time and everything. I was definitely not being presumptuous on that. But if they don't stop you, they're slowly psychologically, they're saying yes. They're even convincing themselves without them even thinking about it. So the more you write on the real critical pieces of paper, the more likely you are that they're going to say yes in this situation. And then one of the things, the mistakes that newer agents do, like they have a briefcase and they have all the paperwork in the briefcase, but then all of a sudden they finally get their nerve up and they ask a closing question. And then they're like, well, I just need to get your approval here. Let me get this right here. If I can just get your approval. I mean, come on, man. What's better? And all of a sudden they're pulling it out. And now they're like, okay, this is a change in the chemistry here. He's reaching in. This is a big deal. They just pulled out, hadn't had this piece of paper out the whole time. Now he's pulling this big piece of paper out. You want that piece of paper sitting right there where they can see it. You're making notes on it the whole time. That is part of the writing close, is anytime you're making little notations on all that paperwork, the listing agreement, the dual entry form, all that stuff, anything that's there and you're writing on it, you're closing right there. And remember what we said about the technique, what closing is, moving people towards a yes decision. That's what you're doing when you're closing. It doesn't have to be the final close. So just remember that it's an effective technique, and you either believe it or not believe it. Again, writing the date is kind of a pre-close. The whole psychology is a pre-close. Jones, is today the 7th or the 8th? Do you use a middle initial? Again, the whole thing is there. So I'm gonna skip this part here. I've got a lot of videos. I'm not gonna play them all just because they're there. But the trial close. Now this is the most powerful of all closes. This is the most, you can stop with the writing close and the trial close, and we can shut it down from here. And if you implement these sales closes, whatever percentage you've done before will double. And that's basically when you ask questions. See, a lot of people just present and talk and sail right through and then wait to the end and then they ask for the sale or whatever. You shouldn't do that. You need to be asking what they call either check closes, test closes, or trial closes. People call them different things. I call it trial close. A test close is probably a better description because you're testing where they are. So you present your marketing plan, and by the way, you ask questions up front. What is most important in this presentation? I want to focus our time because I could spend 3 hours here, and neither one of us have that kind of time. So I want to focus my attention to what you're most interested in. And we'll actually have that later on. I'll present that later on more specifically, but you ask them, and then when you find out what's most important to him, said, Mr. Huggins, you told me that marketing was really important to you, and I just presented to you. So tell me, is there anything you think I've left off there? Do you think that would be good enough to get the job done in your eyes? And if they say yes, it's kind of hard to go back on. So if you can ask a trial question on all the important details, those are pre-closes. You kind of pinned them in the corner. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you, as I'm going down the road, as I get closer down, one of the final closes might be, I said, Mr. Huggins, before we started, I made a list of things that were really important to you. And if you don't mind me, I'm going to go over this right now. This is not necessarily this is one way of doing it. You said the marketing was really important to you, and I asked you the question, and you nodded. You said you couldn't think of anything else that you would do. So it looks like we're good to go on that one. You also were really interested in the net that you were going to get. And I think if I asked you the question, I asked a trial close, and you answered that. So it looks like you're, and I go down the list, I said, it looks like you've given an affirmative to all the things we set out to talk about. Doesn't look like there's much to do here, but get the ball rolling. If I just get your approval right there, I'll line up my photographer for next week. And so that's kind of
This would
almost like a
be
summary close.
what we have always called first a test close.
All right, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. I don't know where we got here, but this is beautiful. Now watch this. Help pay attention to this. This is why I've now framed this the Hopkins close. This is possibly one of the best closes I've ever seen. So listen to this.
Be what we have always called first a test close. And I'll tell you this little test close, after you've given them all the information about the product, the service, you've covered the money, they know the financing. And when you just simply say, John, how are you feeling about all this so far? What a great question. I didn't ask you to buy. I didn't say, well, shall we write her up?
Right.
I said, how are you feeling about all this? Then, of course, you give me input. Why don't you just say that to me, Tom? It sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, Tom, it sounds pretty good to me, really.
You know what I think we ought to do based on your statement? Why don't we just draft up our feelings on the paperwork? Then we can sit back and take a look at it. Then you'll be able to know if we should do this. How's that sound?
Sounds like psychotherapy. I like it.
It sure does. So did you have a middle initial?
Yeah.
Now I go on to the paperwork. That little sentence. How are you feeling about all this so far? It's a beautiful question.
Well, and the beautiful part about it is how easily you segue, because naturally they're going to say, well, I think it's sounding pretty good. They don't feel any pressure because you're not saying sign anything, buy anything. Just how do you feel? I think it's sounding okay so far, and I love that. Then what do you say we just draft your feelings in this document? Then you can make the decision. That's what's so brilliant, is that it's not, well, make the decision, then I can draft it. It's, let's draft your feelings in this document, and then we'll see, then you'll know if you want to do it or not.
And here's something else I want you to remember. You'll hear this a couple times in the program. When you say to someone, why don't we draft up our feelings on the paperwork and see how it looks, some of them will say one of two things. Some of them will say, well, that's fine. We're not going to sign anything. Now, when they say we're not signing anything, just be very nice and say, I know, John, and believe me, that's the last thing I'm going to ask you to do.
The very last thing.
It's down here for their approval. Or you can also say this. When they say, we don't want to sign anything, or they'll say this to you. Will you let us take this home and look at it? Whenever they say a question like that, I don't want you to say yes. I want you to simply say, we believe in doing anything the client wants us to do. Okay? So I didn't say, yeah, you're going to take all our forms home. We want to do it. Now, if I'm a pro, I will overcome that area of concern. I'll be able to do such a great presentation that you'll be so enthusiastic about saying yes and owning the benefits of the product that I probably won't hear that again.
All right. You want to take a little break, Wendell? And was that you just did a text there? Money time?
Yes, sir. It's money time.
Anybody want some money from Homestar?
Before we give money away, Steve, I have probably 100 loan officers that work for me, and I preach every time we're together to learn a script that works most of the time for you. I know we've done these great meetings that you have, and I would venture to say that some folks in your organization, just like mine, have never even tried a script. They've never even really tried to see what works. They're sitting on get ready, set, and never go. I remember one thing Jason Evans said, and Steve, maybe we should look at bringing that out to your group a little more, but he said, you'll go to a movie as a grown man and you'll cry with tears over an actor reading a script. And all the actor's done is read the script. He said, how foolish does that sound? It really is not as foolish as it sounds, because he's mastered a script that's convinced your emotions that it's real. And I thought, wow. And so we teach scripts. When you guys give us a referral, the people don't automatically go with us. And we've learned to teach our loan officers, say, Steve's one of my most valuable partners. And let me tell you the reason why he referred you to me. I'm in his trust circle. He knows that I'll take care of you because I take care of him. And we establish those trust comments, Steve, that you've been talking about all day. And that's just, I've done it so long like you have that I really have to stop and think, Why does it work for me? It's just such a part of what I do naturally when I talk to people, just like you do and the other experienced people. But those of you out there that have never developed a script, it may just be you're afraid to try it. Try it. A script doesn't work, modify it. If it doesn't work again, modify it again. Then you'll find what works for you most of the time. So here's the question for $50. What year did The Wolf of Wall Street come out? Everybody's Googling, Steve.
Joe, you can only win one time. We meant to say that, but you can show off how smart you are. So, which is always.
Oh, there it is. Anna got it, 2013.
All right, good job, Anna.
So Steve, thanks for letting us break in. We got one more to go, so another 15, 20 minutes. I'll come back for the last one.
Thank you, Wendell. Thank you. But wasn't that just so smooth that, hey, so you want to make, hey, just got a few more things to go over, but hey, Wendell, if you don't mind saying, how do you feel about all this so far? And then I'm trying to remember exactly how you said it. You need to practice it, but based on what you just said there, why don't we put your feelings into the paperwork here? That way you can take a look at it, decide if this is something you want to do. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Along those lines, I'll have to study his script a little bit more and really write it down, because the way he said it, he didn't just say it. He's not just pulling it off the top of his head. He has looked at every word very carefully, and he has not only practiced it, but he's practiced it in a way that's very relaxing as he says it. So he is the one to watch on this. But I think that's one of the best ways you could ask for the business right there, is just to let them know you're not at the end, but you really are at the end. But then you just ask, hey, how do you feel about all this so far? Anyways, I love it. I think it's because a lot of us get real tense and nervous when we know it's time to ask that final question. And but that is a very relaxed method of doing it. So let's go over tie downs, because as he said before, if you say it, they doubt it. But if you can get them to say it, it's them and it's real. So this is one of the techniques for doing that.
Now, I teach basically 40 questions. I'm going to give you the ones that I feel you can take right today, start applying in all areas of your life. Now, the first question is actually titled a tie down. A tie down. Now, the tie down is defined as a question at the end of a sentence that demands a yes response. In other words, it's a way of getting yeses, isn't it? That was one, wasn't it? I did it again, didn't I? You're catching on, aren't you? They're kind of fun, aren't they? You can make this a speech habit with practice, can't you? Because you do want to get more yeses, don't you? Now, I'd like all of you to now join me. I'm going to say a statement. I'd like you to add the tie down that's applicable and give me a nice nod. Ready? Investing in a quality product makes sense, doesn't it? Gosh, they've got to say yes to that. They won't say, oh no, we're looking for something that just breaks all the time. Haven't you got a real rotten product to talk to me about? No, they'll say yes to that. So that's the tie down. Now have fun with that. Don't overuse it though. See, some people go, boy, I love that, isn't it, doesn't it, wasn't it, couldn't it, wouldn't it, shouldn't it, can't you, won't you, don't you, I love that thing. But then they overuse it, and now you're getting pushy. Here's a general rule for you in sales. For every hour presentation, use no more than 2 tie downs in the presentation. That would be your maximum, or you're moving from giving them a good opportunity to say yes to getting pushy and controlling, and people don't want that today. All right?
So you can use a tie down as kind of a trial close to get them to basically agree to something that you pretty much need them to agree to in order to buy. And again, always use the head nod or either way to kind of elicit the kind of response that you're trying to get. Again, a tie down is a question at the end of a sentence that calls for a positive or negative response. It's usually a positive response, but it could be, That's not the kind of thing you want now, is it? It could be a negative response. Example, reputation for excellent service after the sale is important in making this decision, isn't it? So again, kind of including this into your presentations, just a few of these, I think they can have some profound effects. You know, standard tie downs, aren't they, aren't you, can't you, should, couldn't you, doesn't it? You know, all that stuff. If you want to screenshot it, there's a bunch of examples of what, you know, the tie downs that you can incorporate there. And then we'll get into the sharp angle close. I'm gonna play a little Tom Ferry here, mix it up a little bit here. He's gonna talk about his 2 favorite closes here.
Both know at the end of the day, knowledge equals confidence and ignorance equals fear. If I don't know what to say, I don't close at the end. And whether I'm trying to get an appointment, trying to convince somebody to give me an email or a cell phone, or convincing the buyer to write the offer that makes sense, or the seller to accept the offer or price it correctly, if you don't know what to say, my friends, we stumble and fumble in that moment and we lose the opportunity. So today, we want to just up your skills with the 2 most basic closes everybody knows. We know the first one is the if close. And of course, the second is the alternative choice close. Let's take a look at the pattern, which I'm going to encourage you to write down. The if close pattern goes like this. If I can X, would you Y? If I can X, would you be willing to Y? And the alternative choice goes, would you X, or would X or Y be better for you? Would X or Y be better for you? So these are very basic patterns. And what I love about patterns versus a canned script is that you can be flexible. You can add in all of the most important criteria of your customer to be effective. So let's take a look. Ready? Here's some samples. Samples. If I can show you how we sell our homes for 2.7% more, now this could just as easily be how we sell them faster, how we get more money, how we repeatedly sell at the highest possible price. Whatever the advantage is that you want to present that you're doing for the customer, if I can show you how we sell our homes for 2.7% more money on average, would you be open to a 15-minute meeting? See, what's happening with the if close is I'm making this big promise, something that, of course, you can deliver on. If I can show you how we sell them faster, we get more money, we do it with 5-star reviews, whatever your degrees of separation are, the things that you and your firm do that is measurable and a benefit to the customer, if we can show you how we do X, would you be open to a 15-minute meeting? At the end of the day, if the promise is strong enough, it's kind of hard for them to say no to that 15 minutes, especially if you're talking to an expired listing or a for sale by an owner or an internet lead or someone that was referred but they're a little bit hesitant. You got to show them the secret sauce and then close. Make sense? So that's a sample of the if close. Let's look at the alternative choice. The most basic one you probably are already using is, would mornings or afternoons be better for you? Would X or Y be better for you? Now, what's great about this close is, you win and they win, right? It's power to the people. It's give the customer what they want. Do you want to meet in the morning or do you want to meet in the afternoon? Even if I'm just beginning the closing process for an appointment, right? Would mornings or afternoons, are they better for you? Are the weekdays or weekends better for you? Monday or Tuesday at 4, as an example, this is one that every real estate pro has in their bag. Let's look at another one of the if close. If I can get you what you want, would you move forward today? Think about that in a negotiation, right? Can we get the furniture? If I can get you the furniture, would you be would you be willing to move forward today on that price? The bottom line is, my friends, there are, as you can imagine, so many different variations of this. And again, I want to stress what I love about these 2 closes is that they're patterns, not a set script, that you're really thinking about the customer, their criteria, what's important, and your degrees of separation, your, if you will, advantages that you can deliver inside your service. That's what's going to make this win. Another is, would you like to price your home to sell or price it to sit? It's funny how many times I've heard variations of that from all my top clients. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, would you guys like to price your home to sell? And by the way, remember, would you guys like to price your home to sell, or do you guys want to price your home to sit, right? Which is better for you? Again, basic. But I'm really curious in the comments, right? Have you really learned all the different closes? Do you know all the different patterns? Is this an area of strength for you, or an area where sometimes when it comes down to the moment of truth, you get a little uncomfortable because you just don't know what to say? I'd love to see your comments. And of course, the little worksheet that's going to be attached with these, make sure you're downloading that and doing the assignments. Let's look at, again, would you like to price your home to sell or price it to sit? Which is better for you? If I can get you what you want, would you move forward today? Would mornings or afternoons be better for you? And if I can show you how we sell our homes for 2.7% more money on average, would you be open to a 15-minute meeting?
Okay. Those are the basic closes. We'll listen to, there's a little bit bad quality, but I've downloaded this is Brian Tracy, him explaining the sharp angle close. I used to use this in health club sales, I'll tell you, all the time. This is one of the first closes. Those are the two first closes I've ever kind of learned. And that sharp angle is always the way to really nip things in the bud in a sales situation, you know, where you basically say, you know, you find that last objection and you go, look, if I can solve this problem for you, are you willing, are you ready to move forward? And most of the time you always nod your head. I've used that 100 times in a lot of different situations. So sharp angle is very important. And he calls it the if close, but
the sharp angle close is where you take this is when the person, you know, wants the product and they're bringing up sort of what we call smokescreen objections. They're just coming up with objections. They say, well, I don't know if we can afford the monthly payments. You say, if we can spread the payments and get them down, will you take it? So you use the objection as a way of closing. You close on the objection, if you like. The person says, well, I don't think that your product will perform to my specifications. You say, if we can prove to you that it will you take it? You say, well, I don't think you can get it here on time. If we can get it to you on schedule, will you take it? So what you do is you take the objection and you just turn it around into a reason for buying. Because this forces the person to say either, well, yes, I'll take it, or that's not the real reason.
so yeah. So you take an objection and turn it around and close the deal with it. It's very powerful. They call it the sharp angle though for a reason. It's kind of, it can be sharp at times. So you gotta kind of be careful with it. Alternate close we've talked about. Something called alternative close. You know, either answer. You know, you don't give them a yes or a no. It's either this or that. The porcupine close is one that Tom Hopkins talks about. Some people call it the hot potato close, and involves answering a potential client's question with another question. I'll give you an example. You know, hey, Mr. Birchfield, when you know, if you were to list my house, would you be doing open houses?
Do you want open houses to be held?
Yes, there you go. So you did it right. So is open houses something that you're interested in? You know, it's rather than a lot of times we'll always answer the question. Yeah, I'll do open. I'll do lots. I'll do one in the 3 months. I'll do one in 6 months. Oh, okay. Well, you know, I really hate open houses. My friend, you know, my best friend had an open house and they stole all the money. So I'm definitely not interested to an agent that wants to do open. Then you have to backtrack and then reverse around. But that's not really the reason why. They just say psychologically it serves as a great close. If you go, is that something that you're interested in? Well, let me make a note of that right now. Is interested in that. Now you can make a few follow-up questions on that, but they're saying the sales gods say that it, you know, instead of answering a lot of those questions, doing the porcupine question, porcupine close, that is which is a question back. They ask a question and you ask a question back, is the most effective way with dealing with most of these questions that they have. And you're basically closing it. So, you know, is an open house something that you're interested in? The approach close is something like this. If we go through this point by point, let's just say you become ecstatic, and I mean ecstatic with all the aspects of the program that we construct together. Do you see anything preventing you from hiring me as your realtor? You know? And you have to say it smoothly, but do you see anything preventing? If we go through this, I kind of said it too fast. If we go through, you know, this consultation that we're going on here, and let's just say you become ecstatic with all aspects of the program that we construct together, do you see anything preventing you from hiring me as your realtor? No? Okay, good. Well, then you know that all you got to do is make them ecstatic. They've already said. And then if they say later on, I think I want to think about it. Well, wait a minute. I thought I said earlier on that if you became ecstatic, that you would list with me. That's kind of what you said. And obviously I've done a poor job. And you're not ecstatic. So what about that I presented to you, that makes you less than ecstatic? I'd really like to know that so I can, learn from my poor presentation skills. So that's an approach close. And here's an approach close from Brian Tracy. Let's listen to him.
Okay, close number 2. This is called the approach close. You use this right at the beginning of the sales presentation. And the purpose of the approach close is to get the person to make a commitment to giving a decision at the end of the presentation, rather than the person saying afterwards, I have to think it over. And the approach close is something that you use when you have a product or service which is used and needed by almost everybody. And what you say is this. You say, Mr. Prospect, recognizing that at the beginning of the sales presentation, sales resistance is the highest. The person's resistance is up. Remember, we live in a commercial society. People are trying to sell us something every single day, 50 times a day. 2,000 advertisements a day is what we see in our society. Radio, newspaper, television, billboard, buses, and so on. Everybody's trying to sell us something. So we have natural, from the age of 5 years old, sales resistance. And you have to overcome it, and this is a beautiful way to overcome it at the beginning. You simply say this, Mr. Prospect, I'm not going to try to sell you anything now. I'm not going to try to sell you anything right now. Just relax. The person says, oh, that's good. You say, all I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of the reasons why people have bought this product and continue to buy it over the years, or one of the reasons why thousands, or some of the reasons why thousands of people have purchased this product. And all I ask you to do is look at the reasons why others have bought it and judge for yourself and tell me one way or the other whether or not this applies to you and to your situation. Is that fair? I'll just show you why others have bought it, and you just tell me whether or not it applies to you and your situation. The person will say, okay. See, what you're doing is you've offered them a deal. The deal is, I won't try to sell you if you will listen with an open mind to my presentation. And the person says, okay, I'll listen with an open mind. And then you go into your normal presentation. And you go through the presentation. At the end of the presentation, the prospect cannot say, well, I have to think it over. You say, Mr. Prospect, you promised you'd give me an answer one way or another. It's a very simple close. You promised you'd give me an answer one way or another. And from what you've said, it seems that this product is just ideal for your situation. And you can go right through to the close.
Yeah, I kind of just thinking off the top of my head as I'm listening to him, I'm trying to construct things. I'm usually my most creative in the mornings, like 4 o'clock in the morning, believe it or not, it's my most creative time. But I was thinking, with the 5-star reviews and stuff like that, I'm trying to think of an approach close where you basically tell them, say, listen, just want to let you know, I'm not the type of real estate agent that is really adamant about people, listing, tonight, even though that you really are. I've got a 4.8 star rating. That's what I'm most worried about right there, is that I like to keep a reputation. But, what I will ask, though, is I'd like to explain to you why I have that 4.8 star rating on on my reputation on Google or whatever. And then at the end, after I've explained to you why so many of the people have been happy, I like to get your basically somewhere along the lines where you'd like to see, if they understood why the clients were so happy. I know I'm not saying it just right. I was wanting to work with a script on that, but I'm just thinking off the top of my head, something like that. Now with the 5-star ratings, explaining why so many people have been so happy but in essence, what you're trying to do with the approach close, no matter how you script it out and how you say it, there's a million scripts for this. You are getting them to basically give you an answer other than I want to think about it. Now, I said this isn't going to be about handling objections, but I will want to share something with you. I think it was last year at the NAR convention. I was at a David Knox seminar, and I did hear something where they had an agent on stage, and I like my 7-step objection handling process. But I'm about to go over with you what I think is possibly the best way to handle the objection of I want to think about it. Because there are 3, to correct me if I'm wrong, Joe and everybody, but I feel like there are 3 main objections that you stand to face when you go on a listing presentation. It's the I want to think about it, because that's just what that's the smoke screen they all throw up. I want to think about it. The second thing is them not liking your commission and wanting to haggle you, some sort of script around that. And the third one is just saying that they made a pact that they're going to interview 3 agents or something. Those are the 3 main ones. You know, I think it's probably about I don't want to say a chance, probably at least a 33% chance one of those are going to rear its ugly head. I think those 3 cover about 80% of the objections we're going to have out there. So the one I want to talk about is the one that really is tough. Is I just want to think about it. It's like you can't grasp it, you can't wrap your arms around it. So I listened to one lady who was a big time producer, and she said this is her way. And so she would say when they said that, it would get there towards the end. Yeah, well, we've made a decision, and we said we want to think about it. She said something along to this. She goes, well, I understand that, completely get where you're going for. Trust me, that's kind of the way I like to do things. But you know what I found? I found that most people have a gut feeling about things. They really do know what they want to do. And basically, this really works with a couple. And basically, really all they really need to do is they need some little privacy, a little bit of time so they can talk and make sure they're on the same page. And so that's what we found about 90% of the time. So here's what I like to do. I've got about 15 minutes. I'd like to walk around the house, take some more notes, take a few photographs. I'm going to leave you guys alone. Like I said, most people have a gut feeling. I bet you do too. So when I come back around, then I'll find out if you've made a decision. Does that sound fair? Awesome. All right, I'm going to go look for around the house. Then you come back and you say, all right, what'd y'all decide? Are you ready to hire me? Or someone you can say, hey, are y'all ready to hire me? That works probably 75% of the time. That is actually better than my 7-step. My 7-step process is great, but that would almost be next. Then you would go into that afterwards. And I think that is one of the most brilliant ways of handling. I want to think about it. So go over a few more closes. I will close this thing down in 13 minutes at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, so establishing the criteria again was, you say something to sellers up front and say most sellers, there's been research done, and, correct me if I'm wrong, just because research has been done doesn't mean that you fit the template. But studies have been shown that most sellers are interested in 5 things, Mr. Birchfield. But, they want to know about the agent's marketing plan, my marketing plan, and my service plan. They want to know about me and my company's qualifications. They want to know how much they're going to net, because ultimately, nothing else matters but how much money comes at the closing table. Am I correct? Yeah, you do that. By the way, that's kind of a somewhat of a tie down close, even though it's not an isn't it type thing. When you're nodding yes. So now I've gotten to commit that net is the thing. It's not price. It's not expenses. All that really matters is net. That's a pretty big thing. If I can get them to commit to that, wouldn't you agree? How long does the process take? And what is really required from me, the sellers? Is there anything else, Mr. Birchfield, that we need to spend some time on? Because that's what most people are interested in. Guess what? By me saying that, according to Robert Cialdini, that is one of his the 7 most persuasive aspects, things that people are most persuaded on are what other people are generally, that if you say that, most likely they're going to say, no, that's exactly what I'm interested in as well. So, again, once you've established the criteria, now you can kind of then ask trial questions on all the 5 criteria to make sure you are, that you're in good graces with them. And if they give you the thumbs up on all the criteria, then you basically say, hey, we established the criteria that we were going to focus on, and you gave me thumbs up. Matter of fact, I recommend buying a green felt pen and then going over and doing a check after every time they basically and say, look, as you see, I've got 5 green checks right there. That means that you have basically said, you gave me the thumbs up on all of these. So it's very effective if you can establish the criteria and do those green checks. I think that's a lot of closing going on right there. And that is bringing the conversation to where you want it to be. So I love the invitation close. We've kind of already done it before, but this works. this is a way of a final close, and it's a very non-threatening final close. So he's not going to say it in a way that we typically say it, but I know we'll say it the way we would say it in real estate. The way he's going to say it is for other sales, but you'll get the idea. So listen.
Presentation. The invitational close is where you simply invite the prospect to make a buying decision. My favorite invitational close is, why don't you give it a try? Why don't you give it a try? Very simple close, especially for anything that the person is buying. When you say, why don't you give it a try, you're saying, or you're suggesting that making the purchase decision is not a permanent thing. It's sort of something that you can try. Like saying, why don't you give the car a try? Why don't you give a Mercedes a try? If you don't like it after a couple of years, you can go to another car. Why don't you give it a try is a very subtle way of saying it. Or another one is, why don't you take it? One real estate salesman found that his sales went up 40% each time he walked out of a house with a couple and turned to them and said, do you like the house? And they say, well, yeah, why don't you take it? Why don't you make an offer? Bang. And they found that people say, well, sure, well, why not? So why don't you take it? Or another invitational close is, how many would you like? Or what color would you like? Or would you like us to get started on this right away? Or is this exactly what you had in mind for today? And in other words, what you do is you invite the person to make a decision. You don't run to the end of the presentation and then stand there and say, well, what do you think? I remember the salesperson comes back to the office and says, boy, do I have a lot of good interviews today.
All right.
Presentation.
We talked about summary close.
And see what happens. The summary close is where you sit down and you say to the prospect, all right, after the end of the presentation, you say, well, now let's just briefly go over what we've talked about. And you say, remember we talked about this, and you summarize everything that you've discussed. You summarize the feature and the benefit, the feature and the benefit, the feature and the benefit. You go through the whole list right down to the end. You say, can you think of anything else? Prospect says, no. You say then, well, why don't you give it a try? Or should we get started on this right away? Or is this what you had in mind? Or why don't you take it?
So when I use the summary close, let's say a listing presentation, you can use it for buyers, you can use it for a listing presentation. But again, to establish the criteria, you kind of summarize that these were the most important things going in, and you do a little bit of summary about, what you said and how they were nodding and how you got the green check on the thing. And then it sounds like, there's nothing less to really think about. I think we just need to go ahead and get the ball rolling. But the summary close is summarizing, or you can do it with a buyer situation. If you've established what they're looking for, and then you walk out of a house and you've asked the right questions, and it sounds like this is the exact match of what you're looking for. It has this, has that, has this, has this. I'll tell you what, to me, this looks like the property, that fits exactly what you're talking about. Why don't you take it? Why don't we put an offer, see what happens? That sounds better. Why don't we put an offer and see what happens? You always have a contingency in there. You can always get out. Let's just see what happens. Just float an offer. Of course, one of the best negotiation techniques is what they call a trial balloon. You just trial it out.
And see what happens.
So we're going to keep, so the basic, we'll go over, let's see, how long is this here? That's a short one. This is Brian Tracy talking about, I think it's Brian Tracy, talking about the keys to closing, to being a great closer. Either Brian or it's Tom Hawkins.
How to close good prospects than you can possibly imagine. Act boldly in selling. Remember, the key to sales success is to act boldly and to close boldly. A sales close where you say, why don't you take it, is certainly far more powerful than, well, why don't you take it? In other words, say it boldly. Say it like you confidently expect the other person to buy. Act as though it were impossible to fail. Ask the closing question like it is inconceivable to you that the person could say anything but yes. And practice that. Practice the tone. Remember, in communication, 7% of our communications with other people is the words we use. 38% is the tone of voice. 55% is the body language. So make sure that your body language is erect. Make sure that you look like $1 million. Make sure that your voice is strong and bold and clear, and ask. We find that the person who speaks louder and faster always seems to dominate the person who speaks more quietly and slower. Now, I'm not saying to be obnoxious, and I'm not saying to be pushy or aggressive or overbearing. I'm saying speak confidently, speak strongly, ask as though you expect the person to say yes. And the final point, going right back to what we started, the key to selling effectively, the key to closing sales, is psychological more than anything else. That you must have enthusiasm, you must love your product, you must believe in your product, you must have confident expectations, and you must persist. and this is the final underlying quality. What is it that it says that persistence is to the character of man and woman as carbon is to steel, and that if you will persist,
All right.
how to
That's big.
the hot button.
Hot button. I don't think we use too much of the hot button. Now, one thing I'll bring to your attention that I really liked about Sync, and I talked to KV Core, they're going to bring this feature on there, but Sync has the ability to take it could be a listing you have, or you could load it in as a pocket listing. And then once you load it in, Joe, have you used this feature about matching the match part of Sync? This is beautiful. If you haven't, this is something you need to look. Have you used the matching function on Sync yet? I know, Joe, you use Sync, right? Joe, I'm talking about Joe Huggins.
I don't use Sync that much, frankly. I keep my list of my contacts in there, but I haven't done the match program there. Sorry.
Okay. So it helps that if you have a lot of leads in there under your name, this is what happens. And so here's a technique of kind of getting somebody, these are just all ways, but they have a way that you load a property in there. So first, I've got a picture here that you do a Facebook boost and you get maybe 20 or 30 names in there. Then then what you end up doing is you do a matching. You go in here and you do a match on here. Let me see if I got to put my glasses on so I can see this. But it will then search your database and will rate all. Let me see if I got another slide. I haven't done through this in a while. Let me see. Okay, yeah, there it is. The buyer matches right there. So what you would do is either a listing you have, but what I recommend you do is you load it as a pocket listing. You actually get permission to do some advertising. You don't necessarily have to advertise that property. You have to advertise properties like it. And we can get into how you do that. I'm not going to get into that now, but and then but when you click on this, let's see if I've got another screenshot on. Okay, that is what it's going to look like. It's going to think for a little bit, and then it's going to start putting property. These are not properties. These are buyers you have in your database. And you tell them anything green is great. These are hot people. They're looking for a property like yours. So let me back up a little bit. This is kind of over a process of talking with the seller. You do some pre-marketing and you tell them that you want to show them a little bit, give them a demo as to what type of great marketing you have. You have this great platform, Sync, so then you're in the presentation, probably 3/4 to 4/5 in there. You go, oh, by the way, Joe, I'd forgotten that I'd done a little pre-marketing. I haven't even looked to see what's happened because it's all happened over the last couple of days. But I'm interested myself. Bottom line is, I want to see if I've got any buyers right now for your property. And so you go on there, and let me go back. You go, let me just see. And by the way, you really pretty much already know what's going to happen, but you act like you don't know what's going to happen. So you come in there and you push that button. It does its little, and I say start with, oh, by the way. So again, it's like, oh, by the way, I need to go look and see if we got any buyers for your property right now. And then you go and you push that button, and while you're waiting, it takes about 10 seconds for it to do its little process. Man, I'm hoping we got a few over 70 or so. Any green is good. And then you go, oh my gosh, holy moly, my goodness, this is one of, I usually, my marketing works, but in your case, I think it's working even better than the average one. Joe, what I'm looking at here is right now I have about 7 buyers who want to buy your property right now. I can't guarantee they're going to buy your property, but they've given every indication that they have basically told us what they're looking for. And in this case, you've got 8 matches, 8 things that have your property that matches what they're looking for. These other ones have 7 matches, but these are 86. We never see them in the 90s. So if it sounds like I'm getting a little bit excited, Joe, it's because in the internet leads, it's not days or weeks, it's minutes and possibly hours. But right now I see these people like sifting through like sands in an hourglass. And I really, these are real buyers out there that are either going to be diverted to your property or diverted by other agents to their properties. I'm with you, and I'm really into your property. I think you got a wonderful property. But I got a problem right here. I want to call these people, but I can't do it unless you give me the authority. Will you give me authority to start calling these people and possibly start setting up some buyer appointments with you immediately? And so that's pretty powerful when you can do that matching feature, but you have to have some. That's why, honestly, that's why I want to talk to like a Sean about, somehow or another building up a bunch of leads in a database and letting, because letting people somehow do this search right there. It is so powerful, especially when you do it live. I'll tell you, doing it with screenshots is not nearly as powerful. Because a lot of these sellers ask, "Well, do you have buyers for my property now?" Well, you could say, "Well, I you know what? In about 5 minutes, I'll find out. Most likely I do, but it's either one of two things: I do or I will. But we'll check and see if I do." But that is one of the more powerful things. I called it the sync close, because you basically you actually show that, hey, look, I don't mean to be pushy. I'm not trying to do this. It's not usually my nature, but I feel this immense sense of urgency right now and excitement of wanting to really start calling buyers and seeing if I can set up appointments on your thing. And furthermore, this really shows that my marketing worked for your property as well. So even if these don't bite, I now know I can match your property up with my marketing techniques. It's working. I just need your authority so I can get started. And that, then kind of go to that writing close. And just kind of say, get your approval there. I'll start calling tonight. And furthermore, I'll even make a post to my 3,600 agents at my company as well. So that's a little bit of an urgency close. We all know what the assumptive close is. I'll play it, and I got about 5 minutes.
Another close is what is called the assumption close. And the assumption close is called talking past the sale, where you assume that the person has bought. You treat them as though they have just said, "Yes, I'll take it," and you walk right past it and you say, "Well, how would you like to make a payment?" You've just finished your presentation. You say, "Well, who's going to handle the mortgage arrangements for this?" Even before they've said, "Yes, we'll take it," or not, you say, "Who's going to handle the mortgage arrangements?" You assume that they've taken it, you talk past the sale, and you go to wrap up the details. This is called the assumption close. It's one of the most powerful that I've ever seen. The takeaway close is a neat one. Now, ladies are always suckers for the takeaway close. I'll give you two examples. First,
I moved to the takeaway close. Takeaway close. I was asking one of our top agents. He said that is their number one thing. There's a lot of ways we can use the takeaway close, and we'll get into that. But I'm pretty much all right. I'm gonna do one more. I'm gonna do the. This is a Tom Hopkins special. This will be the last close of the day because I pretty much only want to go 2 hours on this here. So here's Tom Hopkins with a level with me close. And it's something that is really beneficial to have in your repertoire. So listen to this.
Interested, would you? What phase of the opportunity is it that you want to think over? Is it the quality of the service I'll render? They say no. Is it something I forgot to cover? They say no. Seriously, level with me. Could it be the money? You'll be able to have them tell you, yes, it's more than we want her to spend. It costs too much. Then we'll find out the amount of money it's too much. We'll isolate that, and we'll use some strategy to help them rationalize making the investment.
So the level with me close, and I could have played, there was some more before it, kind of how he gets in it, and he's getting objection. Can't seem to get that, isolate that objection. And then he's got to be real soft in your delivery. Joke, come on now, level with me. Is it the commission? All right, you kind of sense you know what it is, and a lot of times they'll buy it and they'll go, yeah. As a matter of fact, Steve, it really is the commission. To be honest with you, I've gotten a quote from somebody else. Then you go into your other techniques, potentially to isolate that. You do the isolation, and then you have to have techniques, what we call solves. There's always the solve. When you're doing the 7-step objection handling process, there's the cushion, there's the question, clarify, isolate, then close, confirm, and that's basically it. So that's basically it. That's it for today. Hopefully you got a few tools to use They won't really be tools unless you practice them. You have to rehearse them. In coaching this next quarter, we are going to assign people in either 3s or 4s. We haven't decided whether 3 is the better number or 4. And so we're going to be giving people points for having sessions of working on objection handling, working on closes. That just means saying it. The more you say this stuff, and the more you hear it, believe it or not, hearing it, saying it, it will become second nature. If you just hear it from me or Tom Hopkins or once or twice, it isn't going to stick. So you have to be repetitive with this stuff. So we're going to do that in the coaching program. We're going to have what we call peer partners. And peer partners are beneficial. They're almost like accountability partners, but they're also for practicing, because we're going to give points for taking hour and a half sessions and practicing. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. I tried to throw some tools at you. 2 hours is a good bit of time. I know everyone gets tired after that. I start to get tired. But thank you, and we'll see you next time. Unless you have any other questions. Yeah, and I'm looking at Joe's. Yeah, did we cover everything? Would you like my assistant to draw up the paperwork for your approval? Of course, then Joe picks up the phone and calls me, and I go, hello? Yeah. Yes, are you Joe's assistant? And I go, yeah. But, well, awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you, Anna. Anna, are you related to Angie? We got Angie Epstein, too. Oh, you are Angie. Okay. Well, hey, Angie. All right. Awesome. Well, you guys have a good night and a good weekend. Appreciate y'all. Bye-bye. Thank you, Wendell, Homestar. Thank you so much.